Hello, my name's Larry Burkholder, Training Manager, Digger Specialties, manufacturer of the Westbury aluminum railing systems. On my set today, I'm going to install a 6-foot section of Riviera C30R. That is a 3-rail system with rings between the mid-rail and the top rail. This is demonstrated on another video, but we're going to attach our hardware using a template. We're going to have a crossover on this side and a through post on this side. As we focus down here on our box, I have this open and you can see the 3 rails, which I'm going to set down here on the floor in front of me. And I'm going to fold this back and you can see the hardware pack, all the rings, and all the balusters. I have cut my rails to the correct length and now I'm going to test fit everything into position. So we have the bottom rail, which you can denote that the bottom side is smooth with the holes routed for the balusters. It has a PVC insert inside to receive the balusters. We're going to drop this into the cups. Again, this is a test fit. We have the mid-rail, which is going to have slots in for the balusters on the bottom of the mid-rail and slots in for the rings in the top of the mid-rail. This is also going to have a PVC insert inside, but it's an H configuration to receive the balusters from the bottom and the rings from the top. And we're also going to put our top rail into position. Now, our top rail is going to be 1 inch longer than the mid rail and the bottom rail on both ends. So this end is untrimmed because I'm using the crossover. This end has been trimmed 1 inch because I'm using the through post. We're going to put these into position. And you can usually get enough movement out of the post, and I can see that all my rails are at the correct length, and I'm ready to begin the installation process. I'm now ready to install my bottom rail support. Here you can see the contents of the bottom rail support. These are included in 5, 6, 7, and 8 foot lengths of all Riviera models. This is a male-female thread pattern. I'm going to tighten these to a smallest dimension possible. I have marked the center of the bottom rail. I'm going to take the screw provided, and these are hollow profiles, and I'm going to install the bottom rail support. We're now ready to attach the bottom rail to our bracketry using the provided flathead screws. These are number 2 square heads, side entry. Repeat on the back side and repeat front and back side at the other end of the rail. I'm now ready to install the balusters into the bottom rail. If you recall our discussion on the PVC insert to receive the balusters, you want to make sure that you're forcing this baluster all the way to the bottom of the bottom rail. By putting a baluster in like this, that's not acceptable. That baluster will rattle. You need to force it all the way down to the bottom of the bottom rail. Sometimes you may need a rubber mallet to do this. We're now ready to install the mid-rail on top of the balusters. Be sure you have the side for the rings facing upward. And I've partially began this. You can see this is seated in the cup. And I have these balusters all started. And you just simply work down the line and get these balusters into position. You may need to use a rubber mallet to help seat things. We're now ready to attach the mid-rail to the hardware using the flathead screws provided, number 2 square head, side entry. Repeat on the back side, repeat on the other end of the rail. We're now ready to install our rings into the mid-rail. Notice there's a short tab at the bottom of the ring and a long tab at the top of the ring. The long tab is the tab that goes into the top rail, and the short tab is the one that goes into the mid-rail. I may be using a rubber mallet to attach my top rail to the rings. So this is a 6-foot section. It does require a bottom rail support. And in order to provide support, if I'm going to be using a rubber mallet, I'm going to take my bottom rail support and I'm going to tension it to the deck by turning it clockwise. Simply want to force this down against the deck until you feel there's weight onto the bottom rail. We're now ready to seat the top rail into the tabs of the rings. And I have these first 6 or 7 already seated. And you can see I have it in the cup down on this end. I'm going to give it a few taps with the rubber mallet. And I'm going to have that handy as I work down the line, seating these rings into the slotted holes in the bottom of the top rail. I now have the top rail fully seated on top of the rings. I started on this end because this is in cup form and inserted the rings going in this direction. I had a little difficulty here on this end, and what I did is I removed these 2 screws so I had some flexibility at the post to get the top rail seated inside this area, inside the crossover post, and then reseated these screws into the mid-rail bracket. But this is ready for the top rail to be attached to the post. We're now ready to attach the top rail to the crossover bracket. We're going to use one of the coated screws, one of the coated panhead screws, and a 6-inch bit is a must for this. Don't even attempt this with a short bit. If you don't have a 6-inch bit, you're going to need to go purchase one, because that short bit, you're going to damage this mid-rail with your drill. But a 6-inch number 2 square head works wonderfully. We're now going to do the final trimming on this system. We're going to do the last side entry screw, attaching the top rail to the top bracket. Repeat on the back side. We're going to put the flat cap in place. We're going to put the rounded cover in place. In retrospect, it would have been better to put this in place first. One of the things I do want to comment about as I was putting this together, you can see my cap has been removed, and we had to partially disassemble the section to get this, this cover in place. So that goes along with 4-foot, 5-foot, 6-foot, 7-foot, and 8-foot sections all have a different spacing to the first ring. If I would have cut this section down to another length, sometimes there can be up to a 4-inch gap in between here before the first ring starts, and that's part of the design of the product. Obviously, you're going to want equal baluster spacing to the post, and you're going to want equal starting point for the ring to the post. However, sometimes there is a gap. Unless you want to engineer a half ring, there's going to be a gap before the rings start. So I believe you would only run into this scenario where I had to partially disassemble to get this cover in place, and you would learn very quickly that you need to put this cover in place on 6-foot sections prior to attaching the rings. We're ready to continue on with the finishing here and put the bottom bracket in place, and we will finish this project by putting the flare in place. Thank you for watching this Riviera C30R installation for a 6-foot straight system. Have a great day.